Hello and welcome to this video. The last bonsai video looked at the top of fig trees and some poor grafting. This video will focus on the opposite end of a tree. A focus on Nebari and getting better results from your bonsai. Nebari is a term referring to the surface roots and root flare at the base of the tree trunk. It is an essential element of bonsai which gives balance to the tree's appearance and substantially provides the illusion of age. The only way to get an immediately better or obvious Nebari is to select stock with this pronounced element in mind. Most trees will have a natural root flare. Over time, the process of root pruning and repotting will develop the width of this base. This is driven by fanning the roots out over the pot's surface. This in turn forces the tree to develop a wider trunk for these to grow from and be supported by. This is similar to the process of developing a sacrifice branch. In many cases, your tree will have a root flare to begin with, but it may require development. The first approach to this is to ring bark your tree. This creates an impediment to the flow of sap. As the sap is stopped at the tree right below this point, everything from there down receives more nutrition, which encourages growth. Over time, the tree will heal, and overall growth will resume. The downside to this is scarification of the tree trunk. In cases where your tree lacks Nebari from the beginning, or you need to substantially encourage growth, there are several options available. The first uses a flat surface. This approach is especially useful for those species with a taproot. You begin by creating a hole in a flat surface. Objects like a fence paling or even a saucer will work. Place the taproot through this, which creates a fixed position. And eventually a tourniquet. Layer the remaining roots over the top of the flat surface. This will force the roots to grow horizontally. As the tree becomes established, the roots encourage growth of the tree trunk by spreading. Normally this would be vertical growth, and therefore the tree trunk would not need to get wider, but because of the barrier it is horizontal. To support this horizontal growth, the trunk widens. Over time, the taproot's growth becomes stagnated. The root is effectively ring-barked, which leads to death. From this, growth is directed into lateral roots. This in turn thickens the trunk. Some species are easier to work with, and you can skip this process. Particularly good examples are fig and olive species. With these species and others, they have a tuber-like base which can be cut from the trunk. With this, you create two trees, very much like taking a cutting. You can plant this new tuberous tree top into the ground, and it will form a better base and Nebari, as this cut tuberous base will sprout roots. These approaches create a symmetrical root growth. This is useful for trees that will sit flat in a pot. It is not as useful for root over rock, slant, or similar styles, particularly where a greater focus is on a biased root system. For these trees, a slightly different approach is needed. Rather than place the tree horizontal and center to the board, you need to skew it to a side. This allows the roots to grow relatively horizontal on one side and vertically on the other, thereby encouraging trunk growth on one side more than the other. There is a final method involving a more complex root graft that will be covered in another video. The short version of this involves merging a juvenile tree, such as a sapling, with the established trunk of your bonsai. The grafted plant is then cut back, which leaves the widened trunk and roots. Hopefully these methods will help you to improve the Nebari of your bonsai specimens, both those that you are beginning as new stock, and possibly those you have established as stock. For those trees you already have, you now understand at least part of why a bonsai will change its appearance over time, even with normal training methods. Thank you for watching this video. If it has been of interest, Consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.